The Old Testament reading is from Genesis chapter 1, verses 1 to Genesis chapter 2, verses 3, so it's quite long today. In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw that the light was good. And God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. And God said, "Let there be a dome in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters." So God made the dome, and separated the waters that were under the dome from the waters that were above the dome. And it was so. God called the dome sky, and there was evening, and there was morning, the second day. And God said, "Let the waters under the sky be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the waters that were gathered together he called seas. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let the earth put forth vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees of every kind on earth that bear fruit with the seed in it." And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed of every kind, and trees of every kind bearing fruit with the seed in it. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the third day. And God said, "Let there be lights in the dome of the sky to separate the day from the night. And let them be for signs, and for seasons, and for days, and years. And let them be lights in the dome of the sky to give light upon the earth." And it was so. God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night, and the stars. God set them in the dome of the sky to give light upon the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the fourth day. And God said, "Let the waters bring forth swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the dome of the sky." So God created the great sea monsters, and every living creature that moves of every kind, and with which the waters swarm, and every winged bird of every kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let birds multiply on the earth." And there was evening, and there was morning, the fifth day. And God said, "Let the earth bring forth living creatures of every kind, cattle and creeping things, and wild animals of the earth of every kind." And it was so. God made the wild animals of the earth of every kind, and the cattle of every kind, and everything that creeps upon the ground of every kind. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness. And let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the wild animals of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth." So God created humankind in his image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them. God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth." God said, "See, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has the breath of life, I have given every green plant for food." And it was so. God saw everything that he had made, and indeed it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning the sixth day. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all their multitude. And on the seventh day God finished the work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all the work that he had done. So God blessed the seventh day and hallowed it, because on it God rested from all the work that he had done in creation. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here with you all today, and it's an honor to be able to deliver the word. Thank you, Father Ian, for that. I feel like I should share preaching credit with Arthur for reading the entire first chapter and a couple verses of Genesis. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Believe it or not, this first line of Genesis is a literary masterpiece. I'm going to slaughter the Hebrew, but I will try. Bereshit bara Elohim et, I can't see that part. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. In 7 Hebrew words, it succinctly tells us everything we need to know, summarizing the epic narrative of the 7 days that follow. 7 is the number of perfection, and 7s are intentionally and elegantly written into the entire structure and language of Genesis 1. At the center of these first 7 words is a participle that's not translated into English. It's a 2-letter word, et, spelled with the first and last letter of the Hebrew alphabet. It tells the reader the object of the reader the object of the action taking place. It points to the grammatical focus of the sentence, and it draws our focus to the center of the story itself. It's like saying that at this center of everything is the Alpha and Omega. Or in the idiom of our time, this sentence has everything from A to Z. And at the center of it all is the beginning and the end. I could go on, but I won't. And even if we didn't know these nerdy details, we know the story of beginnings in Genesis, or at least we think we do. Some of us were taught an account of a literal 6-day creation thousands of years ago involving God's direct personal formation of all things that exist in the universe. Others of us subscribe to a theory of an instant cosmic event billions of years ago, unleashing powerful cosmic forces that evolved into the universe we observe today. Perhaps others of us believe in something a bit in between. What the truth is, we may never know. Ultimately, it's all myth. But what do I mean by myth? Well, myths are powerful. Myths are the stories and the frameworks and the worldviews that give us a way to understanding things that are beyond our understanding. They help us find the meaning of things that are greater than ourselves. Not merely the origins of our universe, but even the meaning of our existence. To say that something is a myth doesn't mean that it is untrue. In fact, myths communicate truth in a way that literal accuracy cannot. In that same way, myths are metaphors. Who here can give an accurate definition of what love is? Anyone? Do we really think we can communicate everything about love in a single dictionary entry? But when we use a metaphor like warmth or heart, we instill love's known meaning into a form that we can understand, and we leave room for the infinite things that we can never even hope to know. Whichever of these modern creation myths we hold to, one thing is clear: the beginning wasn't really the beginning. And so it was in the ancient world, not just for the Israelites, whose story is told here in Genesis, but also for the ancient Near Eastern peoples who surrounded them, enslaved them, and were even attacked by them. Peoples such as the Canaanites, the Egyptians, the Babylonians. And it is in this context of their myths that the story of Genesis 1 was written. The ancient Israelites lived among these ancient people. They knew their stories. They sometimes even followed their gods. It is in connection with these ancient myths that the story of Genesis 1 was constructed, with intricate attention to detail of language that refers explicitly to their deities and cosmological beliefs. And it is in contrast to these ancient myths that the story of Genesis 1 is told, with subversive twists that make it clear that the Elohim of the Israelites was a whole lot different from the Ra of the Egyptians or the Tiamat of the Babylonians. So let's take a look at the epic myth of Genesis in its ancient context to see what new truth can be revealed to us today. In the beginning, God created the heavens, everything above the land, and the earth, everything below the skies. But before the beginning, things were a mess. The second sentence of Genesis tells us, "Now the earth was a formless void, and darkness was over the face of the watery deep." These overlapping metaphors, or there's three overlapping metaphors: formless void, darkness, watery deep. It's super easy to skip over those words in English, but in Hebrew, they overtly, explicitly reference ancient Near Eastern deities and creation myths that the original listeners would have immediately recognized. These stories invoke common themes of desolation and disorder. They're rife with images of deep darkness, chaotic waters, uninhabitable expanses, and even sea monsters. These stories, my favorite theologian just gasped out loud. He's a 5-year-old theologian, and he's brighter. He knows more about this than any of us. That's what we're supposed to do when we hear about sea monsters. What? These stories follow a common pattern. In the beginning is chaos. Yeah. A godlike figure emerges from the primordial, sorry, let me try it again. A godlike figure emerges from the primordial elements. It fights a violent battle with a competing deity, or it relieves a human urge. Read between the lines for that one. Its mangled body becomes the source of a heavenly body such as the sun. Spent fluids become rain. The deity struggles to rule its creation, trapped in an eternal cycle of sailing the skies to provide sunlight, creating day, or engaging in those bodily acts to produce precipitation. Dangerous monsters stand in the way. Jealous deities act like petulant humans, and they assert dominance like beasts in heat. Success depends on passions and pitfalls. The outcome, uncertain and perilous. Will the sun continue to rise? Will there be enough rain to grow and not too much to destroy? People are powerless. Will our crops live or die? Can life itself continue? You have to admit, this myth of creation is not very good. But into this backstory, a new kind of God appears who turns familiar creation myths upside down in order to tell us a very different kind of story. Let's step out of the Bible for a moment and think about something that's a little bit more familiar with us, Grimm's fairy tale. How do they begin? Once upon a time, there was a beautiful princess. And we all know what happens next, right? She falls in love, something bad happens, her hero rescues her, and they live. But that's not how those stories originally ended. The original listeners would have expected a tale of horror and loss. They would have been surprised by the happy ending we now take for granted. Guess what? The same is true for the Genesis story. It starts with familiar tropes of ancient creation myths: desertedness, darkness, deep. But it takes an unexpected turn. In the Genesis story, a new pattern is established. In the beginning is God. God is wholly separate from the primordial elements. God just is. God is not created. God subdues that raging chaos and separates it into order. God brings heavenly bodies into existence just by speaking a word. And God fills and forms and fills the earth by mere command. No bodily fluids taking place here. Forces of destruction are transformed into conduits for life. Control is established over creation, and success is ensured. Jack should say yay now. Success is ensured. Yay. Monsters and gods are tamed. Yay. Humans, you and I, are created in the image of God and invited to work together with God. And over and over and over we're told, and God saw that it was good. 7 times, in fact. This creation is perfectly good. The Genesis account is a much better story than the story of its neighbors. This is a truly good beginning. All right, I got to tell you the truth. At this point, I was going to go through and explain each day of the story of creation, but thankfully you're getting spared that. Again, Arthur did such a great job. And it is super interesting, and if anybody wants to read it, I'm happy to share it. It's so cool, but it's way too many details for this morning. But I want to just highlight 3 themes that are happening in Genesis 1. They're introduced in days 1 through 3, and then they're filled out with more detail in days 4 through 6. Those themes are darkness into light, the deep into the dome, and the deserted waters into dry land that is dry enough to plant things and have life, but not too dry that vegetation will dry up and will die from the heat of the sun. Each of those things, the darkness, the deep, the deserted waters, are themselves deities from the ancient Near Eastern cosmology. And again, the reference to them is explicit. Sometimes it will even use the name of those gods in Hebrew. All right, again, let me know if you want to read that. It's super cool. But into this story of beginnings comes the story of a new kind of God. A God not doomed to a losing battle against cosmic chaos, but a God who speaks and transforms chaos into cosmic order. A God who offers us a new beginning, a good beginning, It's a myth that we can be certain is true. So why does any of this matter? Who cares about the grammar of the Hebrew text or the detailed backstory behind each day of creation? Surely it doesn't matter if Genesis is about 24-hour days or billions of years. Surely it doesn't matter if Genesis is about Hebrew individuality or connections with its ancient neighbors. Well, myths do matter. In fact, they matter deeply, but not in the ways we often think. The stories of our beginnings shape the path of our futures. We must question the stories that rule our lives, just as we examine the context, connection, and contrast of Genesis with other creation myths. Which accounts are truly true and should remain part of our life-giving story? Which myths are mostly true but need to be revised to be more useful and fruitful? Where are the lies that must be completely rewritten to stop causing harm to ourselves and to others? And what is the new story that needs to be told to ensure that we continue on the path to good life? If we fail to remember our beginnings, we may find ourselves creating a story that doesn't end the way we want it to end. So I was just away for the weekend, and I had last traveled to the U.S., and I have a carry-on bag that I keep packed. And in the beginning, it just had an extra set of toiletries so I wouldn't forget anything in my frequent travels. But over time, I added a lot of other things that I told myself I needed, whether they were truly essential or not. And whenever I tried to reduce the ever-increasing number of things, I recalled the story of that one time I didn't have it and it caused a problem. Instead of becoming smaller, my bag grew and grew. So even when I was getting ready to pack for the weekend, there was just too much to sort through. What do I bring? What do I leave behind? And the narrative I had believed about the things I lacked in the past made my present carry-on literally too heavy to carry. In the beginning, I created a system to make my packing easier. But embedded in my system was a myth that I have to have every possible thing. So many possible things. In the end, my pre-packed carry-on became an inefficient system of unnecessary duplicates and ineffective redundancies that spanned several containers, I hate to admit. It turns out I had sea monsters in my midst. If we don't truly understand our beginnings, we can't fully experience our present or purposely design our future. So what are your beginnings? What are the stories that make you? What are the metaphors that are productive and generative, that are useful and lead to more life? And where are your sea monsters? Where have your beginnings gone wrong? Where are your places of all-consuming darkness? Where do you need God to speak, "Let there be light," so you can receive God's insight and inspiration? Where are the depths of your deep? Where do you need God to speak, "Let there be a dome," to separate you from the chaos that overwhelms? And where are your deserted places? Where do you need God to speak, "Let the waters be gathered and the dry ground be seen," so that you can enter the place where life can flourish? Bereshit, beginnings. May the God who began a good work in you be faithful, so faithful to complete it. Amen.